Welcome in for another edition of the Morning Espresso here on the SDH Network, brought to you by Oglethorpe University, Atlanta's premier undergraduate learning experience and soccer powerhouse. I'm Jason Longshore. All the soccer news you need to know for Friday, March 7th. Big weekend in soccer in the United States. It's the start of the 2025 season for three men's professional leagues: the USL Championship, USL League One, that's D2 and D3, MLS Next Pro as well, that's D3. 67 teams among those three leagues. MLS has 30 teams. That makes 97 men's professional teams. England's top four leagues have 92. So that's a good thing, I guess. You might have a NISA Division Three league. You might not. That all sounds very confusing and way too difficult to get into here. You also have the NWSL getting started on Friday with the Challenge Cup. It's kind of like the Community Shield. It is the previous NWSL Shield and NWSL Championship winners against one another. Orlando Pride won both of those last year. They will take on the Washington Spirit tonight. Regular season kicks off next week in the NWSL. Last night, playing without Lionel Messi again, Inter Miami won 2-0 over Cavalier FC of Jamaica in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Second leg will be in Jamaica next Thursday. Tadeo Ashinde, third goal in 4 games across all competitions. Luis Suarez, third goal in 5 games across all competitions. They get the win in front of about 17,000 at Chase Stadium. All 35,000 tickets have been sold at the National Stadium in Kingston next week. Messi hasn't played in the last 2 games. Will he play in that one? Remains to be seen. Javier Mascherano, the manager, has said he's not injured, dealing with kind of a workload situation. I don't know. We'll have to see what this means for Jamaica. We'll have to see what it means for this weekend in Major League Soccer as Miami takes on Charlotte. And we'll have to see what it means for Atlanta on March 16th. All of that is before Argentine World Cup qualifiers coming up, which Messi is part of that squad. Speaking of World Cup qualifiers, Neymar has been called up to Brazil's national team for the first time in 17 months. He's the all time leading scorer for Brazil. They face Colombia and they face Argentina in the March qualifiers. And look, this is kind of a big deal for Brazil because they're in fifth. Now, with the expanded World Cup in 2026, fifth is okay in South America, where in the past it was not. You were going into a playoff. It's okay, but they don't have a lot of margin for error, and they have 2 really difficult games in this March window. We will see how Brazil does. Also, over in Barcelona, sporting director Deco, he's played down the chances of Neymar coming back to the club. That had been talked about a little bit after his resurgence at Santos. He's got 3 goals and 3 assists in 7 games with Santos in state competition. That level of play will ratchet up when the Brazilian Serie A gets started here in the next month. All right, let's go across Spain to Madrid. Drama, telenovelas, controversy. We talk about a lot of this stuff on the Morning Espresso. You might have one at Real Madrid. Carlo Ancelotti signed a new deal through next season. He says that he's not going to leave willingly. Well, he might get pushed out, and Florentino Perez, his I would assume friend, might be the one pushing him out because the whispers that have been going around about Xabi Alonso and coming back to Madrid, they're kind of turning into open conversations at this point, and to the point that it sounds like Carlo and his representatives have heard all about these conversations going on. He might leave Bayer Leverkusen and join Real Madrid next season, which would mean Ancelotti would not be there. But if Real Madrid wins La Liga, which they're not in a, they're absolutely in the race, but they're not leading that right now. Or if Real Madrid wins the Champions League, are they going to push Ancelotti out the door? I. But if you feel like Xabi Alonso is the guy for the long term, because Ancelotti's not the guy for the long term, do you go ahead and rush it? This could get really interesting. And then there's more to this with Real Madrid. Legendary striker Raul, he has been the manager of Real Madrid Castilla for 6 seasons now. He's got there in 2019. So he's out of contract at the end of the year, and they do not see him as the next guy with the first team, even though he's done really well with the second team and he's been there for this long. So it looks like he could be leaving and going back to a familiar place for him, Schalke. He finished his playing career at Schalke, played 2 years there. He's beloved in the Bundesliga for his time there, and he could be headed to the Bundesliga because the door doesn't look like it's open at Real Madrid. I wonder if that opens up later if he goes there and does well. All kinds of machinations and maneuvering in Madrid, as always. Let's go. Let's stay in Germany for a minute. And this was one that was talked about ahead of the Champions League match this week. Lots of drama, lots of former players for Bayern coming out in the media saying that Joshua Kimmich has to make a decision. He has to tell us what he's going to do. Well, it sounds like, as most everybody who was involved in the conversation said, it's all good, and he's going to sign a new deal with Bayern. 4-year deal is what's being reported by Sky in Germany. So that should be done. I'm sure they'll move on to something else to yell about in the German tabloids. In England, the race for the Champions League qualification might be the only real narrative left in the season. The title pretty much done. Liverpool looking like they're going to get their record equaling 20th title. On the other end, 3 of the bottom 4 probably going to be relegated. Mostly done, not completely done. The Champions League spots are what looks interesting. 6 points separating 3rd through 10th in the Premier League. And the Premier League might be getting a bonus 5th spot in the Champions League for this upcoming season. So that means you've got clubs like Manchester City, like Chelsea, Arsenal, obviously, but then you have clubs like Bournemouth and Brighton and Fulham in contention. You have Nottingham Forest, who's in a great spot in the league. They host Manchester City in the early game tomorrow. That starts the chaos. Brighton and Fulham meet in the 10 o'clock set of games. That's the storyline in England right now. World Cup 2026. You're starting to see more things happen. Atlanta released their Sonic ID, produced by Dallas Austin yesterday, a remix of the official World Cup uh, ID theme intro music, if you want to think about it from a broadcast perspective. Cities have been releasing these throughout the week through an unofficial sampling of the cities that have released them. So far, Atlanta and Houston are my 2 favorite out of what I have heard. There's plenty more to come over the next week because every city will have their own. The official posters are starting to come out for each of the hosting cities. Philadelphia, the annual Philadelphia Flower Show was the venue for the unveiling of their official city poster. And they got a Pittsburgh artist to do it. I mean, Pittsburgh's not hosting games, so I guess that's okay. Nicholas McClintock, his design features 3 soccer balls soaring through the sky with the backdrops of City Hall, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and the Liberty Bell. It's okay. It's not bad. It's somewhat abstract. We will see what Atlanta's city poster looks like. That I would assume would be coming out sometime in the next month. It seems like the Sonic IDs and the posters are the first steps to kind of getting us ready for World Cup 2026. World Cup 2030, we might need to really get ready. We might need an extra year to get ready for that because there is a proposal on the table to expand that special World Cup, the 100th anniversary of the event, to 64 teams. The last World Cup had 32. This one's going to have 48. The president of Uruguay's National Federation proposed a one-off expansion for 2030. And FIFA said that they will analyze this to celebrate that 100th anniversary. I can't even imagine. It does make it easier, and this is true. A couple things. Let me stop for a second. Couple things. If they expand at one time, I don't think they come back from it. So if they go to 64, they're going to stay at 64. That's just my personal feeling because there's going to be too much money to be made, and you're not going to then give money back. Second, it does make sense from a organizational standpoint in terms of a format because you have 16 groups of 4. The group winners go through, makes every group game more important. Only the group winners go, and then you have a straight knockout. You could, if you want, keep the round of 32 and have the top 2 go through. That works too, which is my guess is what they do because that's another set of games. So if you do that, that makes sense. It's easy. The third place teams going through in a 48 one, it's not ideal. You can do it. It makes it simple if you go to 64. Are you ready to go to 64? Yeah, you can make it work, and you're going to have some wider margins in some group games, possibly. That's just going to happen. Um, can a country host a World Cup of 64 teams? Not one of them. I don't know if one country can host a 48 team World Cup. That's why you have three hosting this one. You're going to have multiple countries hosting the 2031 if it's 48 teams or if it's 64. I think you're getting to the point now that the World Cup is going to need to be in multiple countries outside of the US being able to host it, outside of possibly England hosting it. Germany could probably pull it off. That might be it, to be honest. Others are going to need either insane levels of investment or partners to have this in multiple cities. So stay tuned. We'll see if 64 teams in 2030 becomes the norm. As discussed yesterday on SDH AM, some breaking news from Nico Moreno, our friend from Sounder at Heart and Pulso Sports and the Soccer Bar. Raul Ruidiaz is linked with possible moves to RSL or Toronto FC. That's making the rounds. He has not signed anywhere since his contract ended with Seattle. Quickly, the MLS schedule this weekend. It starts with Columbus hosting Houston at 2:30 tomorrow. Seattle hosts LAFC. That's a big game tomorrow at Lumen Field. The 7:30 games on Saturday, Atlanta and New York Red Bulls at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Cincinnati and Toronto, DC hosting Kansas City, New England, Philadelphia, NYC and Orlando. 8:30 kicks, Austin hosting Colorado, intrigued by that one. Dallas hosting Chicago, Nashville hosting Portland. 9:30 kicks, RSL hosting San Diego, Vancouver hosting Montreal. 10:30, San Jose hosting Minnesota. And then on Sunday, Miami hosting Charlotte at 4 and the LA Galaxy hosting St. Louis City in the Sunday night soccer match at 7 o'clock. We will be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, obviously, tomorrow. Pre-game coverage starts at 6:30. We are on Star 94 for radio. You can listen using the home radio option on Apple TV if you're watching, but Star 94 in the Odyssey app is where you listen. 6:30 for pregame. Abe Gordon, Madison Cruz will get you started. Mike Conti and I will take over kickoff at 7:40. We will talk to Garth Lagerway in the pregame. We will also talk to Dallas Austin in the pregame to talk about that Sonic ID that was released for Atlanta and World Cup 2026. A lot of stuff tonight. You'll be able to listen on the SDH Network. Atlanta United 2 kicking off their season, hosting New York Red Bulls 2. Pregame coverage will start at 7 o'clock with Madison Cruz and Jarrett Smith. I'll be on the call alongside Madison starting just after 7:30. You can listen on our Mixlr channel. You can listen on our website, soccerdownhere.net, by clicking the listen link at the top of the page. A lot of stuff to talk about. We'll have plenty to discuss on the Morning Espresso when we come back on Monday. Y'all have a good weekend.